AU Commission says various issues are threatening Africa's peace and security. Thanks everyone and a very warm welcome to Addis News Hour with the news. I'm Shifar Aulako and do stay with us.
Excellencies, heads of state and government, first ladies, heads of state, excellencies and men,
Now, the chair of the African Union Commission, Moussa Faki Mahamat, says peace and security of the continent is threatened by unconstitutional government change and other issues. The United Nations Economic Commission for Africa, UNECA, also calls on the African continent to come together to reinforce African financial institutions and ensure sustainable growth. Goshu Melissa reports.
The 40th Ordinary Session of African Union Executive Council of Ministerial meeting started on Wednesday in Addis Ababa. The summit is taking place under the theme of building resilience in nutrition on the African continent, accelerate the human capital, social and economic development. While addressing the gathering, Chair of the African Union Commission Moussa Faki Mahamat said peace and security of the continent is threatened due to unconstitutional government changes and other reasons.
La paix et la sécurité sont sérieusement menacées dans plusieurs de nos régions.
Peace and security have been seriously threatened in many regions of the continent and our member states. The threats have different bases: interstate conflict, expansion of murders in the Sahel region, in the Horn of Africa and South Africa to destabilize in a large scale. Our spirit is being fragile because of the deficit of political, economic and social governance. The resurgence of unconstitutional change of government, which has dangerously been increasing over the past months, is a sign of great deficiency, and actions should be taken to avert the situation.
Anticonstitutionnels de gouvernement qui se sont dangereusement multipliés ces derniers mois.
The United Nations Economic Commission for Africa has called on African countries to come together to build African financial institutions and ensure sustainable growth.
We must, as a continent, come together to continue building African financial institutions. When the crisis hit, we obtained $33.6 billion of special drawing rights from the international community. But we know that $33.6 billion will not suffice. As the African Development Bank, the World Bank, and the IMF have shown, Africa needs, just in 1 year, $425 billion to be able to grow sustainably, which means growing over 6%. So Africa must strengthen its own financial institutions.
The number of food insecurity increased from time to time, she stressed, and Africa should focus on boosting production and productivity.
The number of food insecure people on the continent increased. Africa is not on track to meeting the Sustainable Development Goal 2 target to end poverty and ensure access by all to safe, nutritious, and sufficient food. Sadly, almost 1 in 5 Africans goes hungry every day. The number of hungry people on the continent reached 282 million in 2020. Food prices have been rising, hitting the highest in a decade at 133.7 points of inflation in 2021, according to the FAO Food Price Index. The rising food prices pose threats to our purchasing power, but also cause social unrest. With over 250 million Africans going hungry, we weaken our capacity to be part of this productive infrastructure for the continent and the world. For we know that an unfed child is a child whose brain reduces by definition. It is a negative investment into our future.
She also took the occasion to express her appreciation of collaborating with the Ethiopian government.
We are proud as the Economic Commission of Africa to have worked with the government of Ethiopia, for example, and the government of Rwanda last year to be able to sell in Ethiopia coffee. 11 1,200 bags were sold in 1 second through the internet. This is delivering about $72,000 in 1 second to small and medium enterprise women.
Both speakers stressed African countries should exert extra efforts to build resilient food system on the continent of Africa.
The Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister Demeka Mekonnen said a peaceful and prosperous Africa is within reach if AU members stand together, empowered by fresh thinking, strong collaboration and unity of purpose. The Deputy Prime Minister made the remarks while delivering a welcoming speech at a dinner reception yesterday hosted to participants of the 40th Ordinary Session of the Executive Council of the AU. He thanked all who stood by Ethiopia during its testing times, mentioning the orchestrated attempts of the international media, some institutions and some members of the international community that tried to put undue political pressure on Ethiopia. The Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister also spoke on Ethiopia's commitment to democratization, noting the transparent and democratic 6th general election and subsequent measures taken to make the cabinet of the new government inclusive of competing parties. Now, the 40th ministerial meeting needs to discuss serious thematic areas to prepare delicate agendas and present them to the upcoming heads of state summit at the 35th AU meeting. Talking to ETV English, Executive Director of Coalition on Media and Education for Development Africa Forum, CAFOR, Lawali Cole says the heads of state summit needs to prioritize alleviating serious concerns of the continent in various ways. Abtama Shagre reports.
Dr. Lawli, I will appreciate your commitment, passion and energy to make this exclusive interview. Thank you very much. What is your expectation from the African Head of State Summit, which is expected to kick off the coming Saturday?
There are many issues to be discussed, you know, and we have had a lot of problems in Africa recently, in West Africa especially. We have heard about coups recently, and yesterday one coup was foiled in Guinea-Bissau, and certainly they have a lot of things to discuss. I'm sure they will address them adequately. Many things that they have to look into seriously about the African continent.
After the law enforcement operation in the northern parts of Ethiopia, some foreign countries have been pressurizing Ethiopia not to host this continental meeting in the capital. As part of this move, the federal government is undertaking a lot of fruitful diplomatic activities to return back this continental meeting in the metropolis. Today, African countries' foreign ministerial meeting kicks off in Addis Ababa.
Well, I expect heads of state to address the major issues in Africa. There are many. COVID-19 is a major problem. We don't have enough vaccines for our people. People are getting sick. People are dying, and I think they need to address that first and foremost. Secondly, we need to address, you know, how we in Africa can move forward, you know, in the next 5 to 10 years. We have all these development agendas which the African Union is promoting. You know, we have the Agenda 2063 that we are talking about, the Africa that we want. You know, there are also education strategies, continental education strategy for Africa. We have the strategy on science, technology and innovation for Africa. We have other strategies also, like technical vocational education and training strategy for Africa. And if we implement these things properly, adequately, I'm sure that we'll see a big difference. We'll see a big difference. And also, we need to stop corruption on the continent. That is one thing that's leading to all this problem, all this civil strife, all the demonstrations, it's leading to that. I think we need to really see what we can do. I know the ECOWAS, the Economic Commission of West African States, is doing so well in these days because they speak out against some of these things that are causing problems on the continent. And I would like to see other bodies in the continent also do the same. You know, replicate this, talk about this, and focus on development. Let's focus more on development because that's what we need to do right now.
It's okay.
This is your microphone. I didn't even see it.
Ethiopia will present Comprehensive Africa Agriculture Development Program Biennial Review Report during the 35th AU Summit That's according to the Ministry of Government Communication. Briefing journalists yesterday, Government Communication Service State Minister Salama Kassa said the 40th ordinary session of the Council of Ministers is going on successfully in Addis Ababa. She added that the heads of state summit will deliberate on various issues on the coming weekend.
In this conference, there are various African countries' ministers, including the employees of the Union, participating at the 40th African Union Executive Council meeting that's currently underway. So this meeting will give due attention to biennial review report and will discuss wide range of continental issues within the 2 days.
Salama also underscored that a report will be presented on the implementation of the Comprehensive Agricultural Development Program and other key issues in Africa.
Particularly giving due attention that enable African nations to further boost the agriculture development program, there will be at least a 10% budget to the sector. This program is being initiated by Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed. Hence, it's expected that there will be a report to the leaders on the implementations and reviews of its results and the plan to be implemented ahead. And the conference is also expected to focus on building nutrition capacity in Africa, accelerating human resource development as well as economic and social development.
Welcome back. You're still watching Addis News Hour. The African Union Commission has appreciated Ethiopia's all-rounded preparation to successfully host the 35th AU Summit. Briefing the media, the Secretary General of the Commission also recalled that Ethiopia has had a great experience of successfully hosting huge local and global events. And the story is presented as follows. Against the backdrop of relentless efforts to keep Addis Ababa from hosting huge events, the East African nation has now finally finalized preparations and is hosting the 35th edition of the AU Summit. The fact that Addis Ababa, which is the political capital of Africa, is hosting the event is considered to be a huge diplomatic success.
Allow me to say from the outset that when the Bureau of the Assembly extended to the President of the Regional Economic Communities took that very important decision to hold in person, physically, the summit in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, they have sent a very clear signal to the entire continent that they are facing COVID, they are going to fight it, and they are going to win the battle. The second element is to highlight the commitment and the effort from the host government to make these events very successful. We've seen strong mobilizations from so many sectors, starting from the health. We had twice joint briefing between the Commission and the host government through the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the Ministry of Health, the security services. We do have regular consultations to combine our collective wisdom for the successful holding of this event.
And Ethiopia has great experience in the past hosting huge events, and it is expected to repeat history hosting this AU Summit successfully.
If I may give example of rapid testing of delegations, Ethiopia did provide teams of experts from the health to come to supplement the effort of the Commission to smoothly run these testing sessions as it might not be compromising the holding of the summit. The second element, they have provided so many equipment and masks to assist also the African Union Commission to overcome some expected challenges. Then, from experience, this country has been hosting AU Summit since years, 1963 up to date. They are really developed expertise on managing, planning, and successfully holding summits. We are assured, and you could see everywhere the efforts are ongoing, and the consultations is still well going. We update each other regularly. We believe, and I'm confident, the summit will be held and will conclude very successfully, as the country used to be doing things in a right way always.
Reporting for ETV, Shivaralak. We're still staying on the AU Summit that Ethiopia is successfully hosting and moving on. Hosting the 35th African Union Assembly this time around sets a definition of the rebirth of Pan-Africanism, since Ethiopia is the birthplace of it. Pan-Africanists also say the youth need to be empowered in terms of leadership roles in the midst of African leaders. However, the continent has a lot on its plate to deal with, including corruption. In this regard, Tigist Sarnesa has compiled the following report.
Hosting this year's African Union Annual Assembly was not an easy task for Ethiopia, for there seemed to be a number of domestic and international setbacks to take away the legacy of Ethiopia in relentlessly hosting a number of events. Ethiopia is now hosting after the several hindrance attempts, which gives an opportunity to be taken as a symbol of rebirth of Pan-Africanism.
Pan-Africanism is meant to be unite Africans as one. Train system, having one train system, having its own money, the currency, having its own bank, okay, the Development Bank of Africa here, and then also having its own aircraft system, it is on, and then the visa system, no visa everywhere. So joining every African countries to each other as a one, and then also you can take one passport. And then also the security hub, very huge security hub as one, and then fighting the neo-colonialists, those who are trying to suppress Africa in general. So that is the concept of Pan-Africanism, to make a better, or to build the better future for our coming generation. That's the point.
Pan-Africanist Akalu Abraham noted in an interview that the #NoMore movements have brought a significant awakening among the entire African nations in the realization of Pan-Africanism.
These days, everybody feels like they're waking up, you see, they're awakening with the things. And then the spirit of Pan-Africanism is every corner of the youth now. Not only in Ethiopia, not only in Africa, in Caribbeans, in the Latin Americans also too. The spirit of oneness, the spirit of refusing for the supremacy, the suppression of what we call this Eurocentric attitude. So they want to suppress and then oppress this nation, but they refuse. You see, the NoMore movement, as I told you, the NoMore movement played a greater role. So these uses contributing a lot. So the spirit is there, being one, fighting for the freedom of its people. Escaping away from poverty. For how long our people are living in poverty? For how long we are there to suffer? This question already raised in the minds of every users. Now they are already fighting for that, to see the better future for this continent.
It was expressed that empowering the younger demographics of the whole African population is what will be expected of African leaders.
In different agendas which is important for this country or the continent, they have to be involved. In politics, you can take it, and then in any area of studies, they have to be there. They have to be participate. They have to enjoy in politics. They have to come to the leadership, because they are the one who are expected to be the future leaders of this continent. So they have to be empowered. Leaders of today, they have to involve these youths, they have to give them an opportunity, and then they have to facilitate and put the platform for the youths to come up and then lead their countries.
Akalu also reminded that corruption is a threat to the reform that Africa urgently needs.
Corruption is the one who is killing Africa, I can tell you this. Starting from every corner of Africa, corruption is a very huge thing. Especially in Africa, it's terrible. It's the one just killing Africans, you see. Because of the corruption that we're losing, living in lack of education. You know, the education system, we know it, that's not normal education system. It's not like the Westerners give for their kids the education system. And then if you take the health system, that's corruption is killing the health system and everything. And then if you take the leadership is also corrupted. You are there to select someone that you are interested with, someone that, you know, not the capacity, the knowledge that he has. You are not watching that. You only see his positivity for you and then for what you want to do. So that is not okay. You need to have someone intellectual in leadership as well. And then professionals, you know, in every point of areas, you need to put the right person at the right place.
It was noted that this 35th African Union meeting is expected to bring forth some hope, for it will be held next to the popular #NoMore movement, changing perspectives across the African nations.
Come together from all over the continent in the city that gave birth to the concept of African unity.
We waste time. We sit here and waste time. Say it again. Because what is going to help those people in the streets there in the sun, what we are debating here, taking hours and so on.
Having a predictable financing for our security financing programs and also development programs is a prerequisite.
Well, now moving on, the African Union has had an ambitious plan to transform member states and improve security. But for many Africans, peace and prosperity are far from being a reality. And the 35th summit is happening while the continent is still in a dilemma of a peace and security crisis. Johannes van Town has more on that.
Conflict as a social instruction is inevitable, but within the framework of peace and security, conflict takes on a different, more destructive dimension, recurring and long-running. Conflicts remain Africa's biggest challenge and an obstacle to its social and economic development.
It is of great concern to all of us that incidents of conflict are intensifying and spreading to a number of regions on the continent. Conflict, political instability, and insecurity continue to be major threats to the realization of the Africa that we want. The proliferation of small arms and light weapons and illicit financial flows are among the factors contributing to both traditional and non-traditional threats to states and human security on our continent. As conflicts escalate, they leave behind a sad trail of displacement and humanitarian crisis. Violent conflict invites undesirable and opportunistic intervention from outside our continent. This undermines the sovereignty of African states and serves to advance the interests of others at the expense of the people of our continent.
During the 50th anniversary of the Organization of African Unity in May 2013, the AU Assembly of Heads of State and Government adopted a landmark declaration. They vowed that Africa would not bequeath the burden of conflict to the next generation and made a commitment to end violent conflict on the continent by 2020. Since its inception in 2002, the African Union has been under pressure to resolve the extensive peace and security challenges facing the continent. In the past 2 decades, there have been lots of conflicts in most African countries. Recently, the situation in West and East Africa is a concrete manifestation for a triple effort expected from the African Union as an institution and of each member states of the Union.
We get information from all corners of our continent, and our sources include not only our regional economic communities or regional mechanisms, but also civil society, the private sector, human rights organizations, and so on and so forth. So we have a wide array of sources which provides us information. We have been successful at predicting potential conflicts. There's not a single conflict that we had not predicted in the past, like the Central African Republic, where also we saw it coming, and there we deployed a force, MISCA, which paved the way for the UN mission in the Central African Republic. So people tend to look at things that have not worked, but there is a lot of things that we're doing that works. But ultimately though, us as a continental organization, we have a mandate to respond to conflicts or prevent them, but it is the responsibility of the member states themselves to handle the conflicts ultimately.
AU's African Peace and Security Architecture was established when the organization adopted the protocol on the establishment of the Peace and Security Council in July 2002.
Silencing the guns is also my responsibility, your responsibility, his responsibility. Because of the level of crisis and the appalling challenge, I think our heads of state had to make a date for that. If we Africans, as we did now in Kigali, if we are putting the necessary blocks in terms of really preparing the integration of the continent, preparing to harness the dividend of youth, if we are really promoting the empowerment of women, if we are also really promoting the good governance, which is political and economic, I think that objective is not far from us. We can still have confidence in our Pan-Africanism, in our determination, political determination, and count on each and every woman and man in this continent. I think it is doable, even if we go a little bit further, but let's work. What is important is to work for that.
Conflicts in Africa may arise from multiplicity of factors such as arbitrary borders created by the colonial powers, heterogeneous ethnic composition of African states, inept political leadership, corruption, negative effect of external debt burden, and poverty.
And in another development, corruption is one of the recurrent issues in the history of the African Union summits. Despite resolve made by the continental body and member states to combat it, corruption still remains a challenge. The following reportage by Shegai Matau sheds some light on this.
The African Union appointed the African Union Advisory Board on Corruption back in 2003. It is tasked with the unique responsibility to advise on and address corruption and related themes on the continent. The board is also mandated to rally for the ratification and implementation by member states. Although African states made an effort to fight corruption, it still is a great challenge for Africans. Despite adoptions by most countries, the African Union Convention on Preventing and Combating Corruption does not give nations framework on how to prevent it. To effectively track and prosecute money laundering, African governments need to dedicate more resources. Corruption remains an uphill battle for most African countries. For example, Nigerian President Muhammadu Buhari, speaking at the 73rd session of the United Nations General Assembly in New York, he called for greater cooperation between African countries and to fight an illicit flow of funds across the continent.
Fight against corruption, therefore, involve us all. It is in our collective interest to cooperate in tracking illicit financial flows, investigate and prosecute corrupt individuals and entities, and repatriate such funds to their countries of origin.
Some have highlighted the importance of regional economic blocs such as IGAD, SADC and ECOWAS in rooting out corruption. At a virtual roundtable meeting titled Corporate Compliance in the Fight Against Corruption in Africa, Practices, Challenges and Prospects held in May 2021, it was noted that the crisis presented new risks given its unprecedented scale and demands, while increased digitalization has generated new forms of corruption that will require innovative responses.
I think the theme is very important as we consider the corruption also as one of the triggers of conflicts, because overall it's about governance, and in governance we have political governance, we have economical governance, and it is important that we really address this issue very seriously.
Corruption. We will fight.
Welcome back. You're still watching Addis News Hour. The African Continental Free Trade Area, AfCFTA, is a free trade platform founded in 2018. It is the objective to create and establish single and liberalized market system and the movement of capital and people toward the establishment of a future continental customs union. The Pan-African payment system is currently being piloted in a number of countries on the continent to improve the cost and efficiency of doing business and boosting intra-Africa trade. Jerusalem Batzia has compiled the following story.
The African Continental Free Trade Area, AfCFTA, was created by the African Continental Free Trade Agreement among 54 to 55 African Union nations. The Free Trade Area is the largest in the world in terms of the number of participating countries since the formation of the World Trade Organization. The agreement, which was brokered by the African Union, will boost inter-African trade by 52% by 2022. The objectives of the agreement are to create a single market, establish a liberalized market and the movement of capital and people, and moves towards the establishment of a future continental customs union. With this agreement, members will be able to achieve sustainable and inclusive socio-economic development, enhanced competitiveness of member states within Africa and in the global market. However, many are saying that the agreement is taking time for implementation, and the Secretary General of AfCFTA explains about why it takes hold.
Well, typically trade agreements take a very long time to negotiate, and after you've concluded the negotiations, the implementation also takes time. It requires things like customs infrastructure, customs procedures in each individual country being in place. All of that takes time. However, what I would say is that given the fact that only 18% intra-Africa trade compels us to do something to accelerate and boost intra-Africa trade so that we benefit, all of us African countries, so that we benefit from this significant market of 1.3 billion people, the combined GDP of 3.4 trillion United States dollars, which, as I've been saying in many times, keeps us trapped in this colonial economic model because we have very, very shallow levels of industrialization and productive capacity. And so all of these things take time. Trade agreements take time to implement.
The 12th extraordinary session of the African Union, AfCFTA, was called to launch the new agreement into operational phase, which was hosted in Niamey on the 17th of July 2019. At this launch, 5 operational instruments that will govern the AfCFTA were activated. AfCFTA Secretary General said the Pan-African payments and settlement systems are being piloted in a number of countries on the continent, to improve the cost and efficiency of doing business for boosting inter-Africa trade.
We have in Africa 42 currencies. The cost of currency convertibility, the cost to doing business, the cost to trading in Africa as a result of these many currencies is significant. Some estimates are that it costs the African economy over $5 billion per year, this issue of currency convertibility. And so ourselves, the AFCFTA and Afreximbank, we have piloted, we launched the pilot in West Africa, 6 countries, where we have a digital payments platform. Of course, the African Union ultimately has a vision that in Africa we will ultimately have a single currency, but we all know that there are challenges to get there, macroeconomic convergence, and other factors that have to be taken into account. But I believe this is a very positive first step that we are taking to addressing the question of a single currency in Africa.
After months of delay because of the COVID-19 pandemic in Africa, the AFCFTA officially, but largely symbolically, was launched on January 1st, 2021.
You have been watching Addis News Hour, and now a quick reminder of the top stories. AU Commission says various issues are threatening Africa's peace and security.